Well, I think that if a problem keeps showing up, it has to be our problem rather than situational.
Correct. And we need to own that and get help.
But the other side of it maybe is, like, for instance, say you don't like to be told what to do, or you're very independent and you have challenges with bosses.
King. I'm a relationship and dating coach for executives in a hierarchy. I'm so excited to be here today, and there's a few things that we need to brush up before we get started. Just remember, if you are a subscriber, thank you so much for being a subscriber, and if you have not subscribed, please definitely do so. Today we have a special guest. Her name is Joyce Levine, and she's from Cambridge, Massachusetts, and she's a professional astrologer. And that being said, within her last 30 years of being experienced, she's been an astrologer practicing individuals and couples and families and business as well. She characterized her work as helping clients overcome astrology and psychological obstacles so that they can achieve their full potential and take action, achieving those desires that she wished to. She has written books as well, and one of the books is called Breakthrough Astrology, Transforming Yourself. And then we're going to be talking about dysfunctional family as well as relationships. So I wanted to hear about her relationship, about her clients, and how she helped her client go through that. So stay tuned for that. Hi, Joyce. Thank you so much for joining me here today. And such a pleasure. You're such a treasure in the astrology community. Welcome to AskSindyKing show here. And today I know we're going to be talking about dysfunctional family trees, and marriage and relationships and children. I really want to get the core down, bust some of those myths as well. And what's really important here, I really want to learn more about how you got started in astrology.
Oh, Cindy, it's nice to be here with you. I've been doing astrology for so long that I actually got started when I was in my 20s, and I had an undergraduate degree in psychology, and I thought I would take a year off and then go to graduate school. And in that interim, a friend of mine started studying astrology, and so she did my chart. And actually, I mean, I'm at my age now. This was before computers, so she actually calculated my chart wrong, which neither one of us knew at the time. The ascendant was wrong, the moon was wrong, but even with that, she told me all of these things that even your good friends you don't tell. And so that actually got me interested. And then she and I ended up moving to Boston at the same time. And so when you're young, you can be very irrational. So I walked into an astrology class. The first class I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And it took me 6 years of studying to learn, basically, to be, in a sense, good enough to do it on a regular basis, and to learn how to make money, which are unfortunately not the same skills. But that's how I got started. It was like falling in love. It was completely irrational.
I love it. So I know that you were mentioning earlier when we were having a conversation about talking about learning about yourself is so important. And why would you want to do that? Why could you not do Myers-Briggs and call it a day? Why can't you just go to a therapist and they can tell you what you're like, or go to a friend, tell you what you're like? What's so great about astrology?
Well, you could do all of those things. In fact, I've had clients that have taken Myers-Briggs tests and they've come back and they said, it said the same thing you said. And I said, oh, you're surprised? Your chart is like a picture of your life. And one of the main differences between astrology and psychology is that in psychology, there's a norm. In astrology, what's normal for you is not normal for me. And so we all have what you might call our inherent strengths, the things that we do well that we don't think about, that we may or may not give ourselves credit for because we do them so naturally we may not value them. On the other hand, we have our inherent challenges, which everybody has, no matter what it looks like on the outside. And what astrology does is helps people stand back and look at themselves, for better or worse. And it should, ideally, if you're seeing the right astrologer, because, let me just say this. Not everybody, I'm talking about the way I work. I can't speak for the way other people work, because not everybody does astrology the same way. For me, I'm there to benefit the person and provide understanding and acceptance for the person coming in to have their chart done. My values are not important. What the chart tells me, what I should tell them, and what's important to them. And so I'm stepping back and helping the person step back to look at themselves and get a better understanding of themselves, why they are the way they are, and ideally what they can do with that. And so, again, not every astrologer works the same way, but my work is primarily client-based. And it's really providing an understanding, whether it's from the birth chart or whether it's in a particular cycle. It's not just, I'm being attacked by Pluto or I'm being attacked by Uranus, what's happening to me, but understanding how you integrate that. And not everybody's going to respond the same way.
I could totally relate to that. I got Pluto hammering my moon right now, so I get it. And, that being said, what kind of questions do you get very common when it comes down to your client? What do they ask you? What's the common questions?
Well, usually the first time somebody comes in, they're at some kind of crisis point or challenge. Usually, clients that I've seen for a long, after the first time may come in regularly. But usually the first time, a person's not happy. Okay, they come in because there's some kind of challenge or crisis going on in their life and they want to understand why. And so it could be a job problem, a relationship problem, a health problem, or there's nothing concretely going wrong, but they're dissatisfied. They want to make a life change. They've had the same job forever, but they're afraid to leave, but they want to leave. And so it's usually when a person is either in some kind of crisis or ready to make a change. I don't get a lot of people calling me who are just curious. Again, there are probably as many different ways to do astrology as there are astrologers. And I think people come to different astrologers for different reasons. So if you went to a horary astrologer who basically just answers questions, and you said, should I take this job or that? That astrologer would drop a horary chart and see which of the two offers looked better based on when you got them. What I would be more likely to do is look at what kind of job is it? What kind of company is it? Does this company fit your character or better than the other or worse? So it's from understanding the person and what their needs are based on their chart.
It's totally true, because most people do come either when they're hurting, unsatisfied, and most of the time it could be in their money or their honey.
Well, that's true. That's definitely true.
So it could be.
But people come because they're having problems with children also.
Okay, so yeah.
Or they just had a baby, or their son or daughter just had a baby and they want to give them the present for the birth.
Yes. I did that one of my girlfriend. I looked at the child's chart and I was like, I know what to get this child for. That being said, I know that we talked about, you have mentioned here about family dynamics, and I know that family tree plays a big part of who we are, how we are brought on. How does actually some of these combination of why we have this in our life, why we have to go through some of these, obstacle or, blockage or challenge in our life, is that something we inherited, or is it some sort of trait that we learned? Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, I think that's the old question of, is it nature versus nurture? And I'd say it's both. I think that I don't think it's an accident when we're born. I mean, I don't do reincarnation in terms of looking at people's charts, but I do believe that we choose when we're coming in. And for whatever reason, that we might want to send it back once we get here, but for whatever reason, that we come into the world with a certain set of characteristics. And the family that we're born into is going to reflect those characteristics. And so if your chart, if you have the moon in Cancer in the 4th house, and it's very well aspected, and I'm not sure how much astrology your listeners know, will know, but so I don't want to get too technical, but that would be like a very nurturing, mothering mother. Then you're going to see your mother as, the great cook and the wonderful woman who takes care of you. On the other hand, you could have a sibling who comes in with a Mars-Uranus conjunction in the 4th house. And that sibling is going to see your mother as somebody who's bad-tempered and difficult. And the thing is, both views will be true for the person. Because one, children are born at different times in families' lives. And two, there's a relationship between the child and the parent, and the child also brings things out of the parent. It's like everybody thinks that, the tendency is to think that babies or children are clean slates and the parents put everything in. But the parents there's a reciprocal relationship. Like I used to say to my mother was a Cancer with the moon in Taurus, and I used to say, you never used to send me home with food when I moved out of the house, or you weren't that affectionate. My moon is in Aries. She said, you didn't let me. I had no idea that was true. So do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
So my mother didn't get an opportunity to play out her nature because of my independence, even though I was completely unaware that had anything to do with anything.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Yeah. And, we can talk about projection as well. You mentioned a little bit about that. We can project certain things, but a lot of it has to do with our chart.
Well, in any relationship, actually what I always tell my clients is, the good news is that you're meant to be this way, or you wouldn't be born at this time. And the bad news is this is what you have to live with. And so by the same token, we look at the world through our own charts. So you look at the world your way, I look at the world my way. Each and every other person looks at the world his or her way. And then we relate to other people and think they should see it our way, but nobody ever does. And so you have to understand where you're coming from, which is going to show in your chart, and where someone else is coming from, which is going to show in their chart. It's sort of like, and this is the example that I always use, 2 people get divorced and one says, I did everything for you. And the other one says, what do you mean? You never did anything I wanted. And they're both telling the truth, because we tend to give to people the way we want to receive rather than the way they want to receive. And so recognize, a very simple thing in knowing people's charts is you can change the interaction. Knowing where someone's Venus is will tell you, what they care about. It may not be what you care about.
I love that. That is so well put together. Like how you were saying, it's sometimes you got to look at the individual chart to find out how they want to be received as love. And yes, Venus is the goddess of love and beauty and nice things, and how you want to be pleasure in this life. And that plays a big role in relationship.
Well, it's like, I remember a friend with Venus and Aquarius would say, well, how could you be attracted to somebody if you don't know their mind? And, for somebody that's Venus and Scorpio, I would say, well, that wouldn't be the first thing I'd be thinking about. So just see what I mean? It's like, everybody has their own way of looking at things. And it's not right or wrong. It's just that you have to allow for individual differences.
Yes. Can we talk about Venus and Scorpion?
I'd rather be blue with you than happy with somebody new.
Oh, that was really good. And it's totally true. And it's like, they have so many like tests out there, the five language of love, that will be one of them. You can do that if you don't know where your Venus is or what it does. And, you can have Venus in Virgo, and that could be a little bit different too.
Well, actually, I have a relative with Venus in Virgo. And when she got divorced, she was like lamenting about maybe it was a mistake. And she said, he used to mow the lawn. He used to take out the garbage. And I'm thinking, I don't think I think about love that way. But to Venus in Virgo, love is what you do for somebody. It's it's tangible. You do things for people you care about. Whereas, I know that you looked at, quickly at your chart, you have Venus and Gemini. It's like love is about communication. You need somebody you can share ideas with or forget it.
Yeah, it's all about intellectual communication. Otherwise, if you can't have that deep communication intellectually, I'm out. See ya.
But see, a water sign would need that communication emotionally and may not need words at all.
Yes. Yes. And then Taurus, if you have Venus in Taurus or Libra, it's all about pleasure, and it could be anything sensual, the five senses, and it's
Well,
just
that's more
environment.
Taurus than Libra,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah. More Taurus.
Libra would be more like a balanced relationship and a partner.
Correct.
Taurus would be more like sensual pleasures and show me the money. let's go to good restaurants.
Yes. You talk about quite a bit about family tree. I know that you remember mentioning about maybe a case where you had a client where you look at the mother chart, you can see what's going on with the child and see
Right.
the whole full dynamic, and you can predict certain behaviors, certain things that were having outcomes. And, you deal with conflict pretty well when it comes to dealing with like personality and how to resolve that. That's totally different than what you see most astrologers just reading your birth chart. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know because I just kind of know what I do, so I don't really think about it. But I think my approach is sort of overcoming astro-psychological obstacles, because the thing is we all have them. Nobody's immune. And we all have things that get in the way of our being successful. And by being successful, I don't specifically mean making money. I mean being happy in our lives. So you see somebody who has made tons of money, and yet they're still not happy. Because, in fact, I had a client not that long ago his wife is a double Capricorn with the moon in Taurus. And he is Sagittarius with Sagittarius rising and the moon in Gemini. So complete opposites. And he made a lot of money. Actually, still makes a lot of money. And he was choosing between two jobs. One, which, he always worked for high-end companies and was in high-end positions. And one would be a much better position than he already had. And the other was in a startup where there were no guarantees. And he called me and wanted to know what he should do. Well, I knew by his chart, I knew he was going to do anyway. He just he wanted somebody to tell him it was okay because he was probably afraid of his wife. But, and I actually thought she was going to be mad at me. Because he had to take the startup job because it fit his character. Whether it was a risk or not a risk, or and how it turned out, it was something he had to do given his nature. His wife actually surprised me. She said she wanted him to be happy. But she wanted to run a business on her own that was separate from him anyway.
It makes such a huge difference based on that. And, talking about relationship and family dynamics, I think children is also involved as well. And I think we need to talk about reading charts of our child per se, how that could be beneficial in our life, especially as a parent.
Well, my best example, and this happened many years ago, I had a woman come to me she came to me once and got her chart done. And then she came to me to get her oldest daughter's chart done. At the time, I don't know, can you see my cat running through the
Yes.
He's a Sagittarius, and he doesn't like to be left out. His favorite place is between me and the monitor. I'll tell you something, charts for animals absolutely work.
Yes.
He's a Sagittarius with Mars conjunct the sun.
Good to know.
And now that he's a senior, he stopped breaking furniture. And he has a sister who was born the same day, so they were a great pair. They still are. But anyway, she came to me once to get her chart done, and then she decided to have her oldest daughter's chart done. The oldest daughter was about 7 at the time. Now, they lived in a very rich suburb. Her husband had a job in some kind of investment job. Very, very, very high end. She had a small store. And I look at the child's chart and I went, oh my God, what am I going to tell this mother? I think get the tail out of the way. I hope your viewers don't mind cat interruptions. You know how people with pets are neurotic, and I'm definitely one of them. He doesn't always get up on the desk.
We're getting cat bombing here.
But she came in and I said, what am I going to tell this woman? It was like, I'm looking at a 7-year-old girl's chart from a rich suburb, and the chart was like Attila the Hun. And I said, what am I going to tell this? What am I going to tell her? It's like, if it was somebody that I knew had a long relationship with it would have been one thing. But she had she was in Aries with the sun opposite Mars and Pluto, and Sagittarius. Her chart was like all fire and all, get out of my way. And I said, what am I ever going to tell this mother? And when we got through going over the chart, the mother said 2 things that I will never forget. She said, good, I will never have to worry about her. She'll be able to take care of herself. And 2, it's not my fault. Because the child was already acting out. And so this helped the mother. And so what my suggestion was to get her into team sports, because she'd have to cooperate to win. And so there's always something, because when I looked at that chart, I went, oh my God, what am I going to say? And then the second child in the family was also an Aries. The third baby comes along. This time, they've been longer-term clients. And the new child is a Taurus with the moon in Cancer. Okay, after 2 Aries. She didn't want anybody but her mother. Even her father was like, not enough. And so all her, this woman, all her friends were saying, it's you, it's your last child, you're not going to have another one. You're the one who is, you're the one that can't let go. I go, no. So I looked at the chart and I said, no, it's her. She needs you more than the others did, because the other 2 were Aries. They didn't care if you were around or not. The Aries would be, you give them something to play with and they'd go away. The Cancer wanted you to hold them while they were playing with it. And so, the mothers over there, well, what happened? But, by understanding astrology, she could actually address the needs of each child differently. So she could be more nurturing to the ones that wanted it, and not that she wasn't nurturing to the ones who were more independent, but she would give them more freedom in a way. She wouldn't get in their way.
Wow, that actually really helps quite a bit, because not a lot of parents know about this, because you heard of projecting onto your child, fulfilling your fulfillment on a child.
Most parents do.
Right. And do you think this would prevent this from happening?
Well, you hope. I mean, let's face it. I mean, I can't claim that astrology is a miracle cure because people still act like themselves.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the child's life also shows in the chart before, without knowing what the family's like. So I'll give you another example, if you don't mind all these examples. But I had a woman come to me. She was getting her granddaughter's chart done. And I'm looking at this chart. And now I didn't know this woman. So I didn't know her. And so I'm looking at the chart. And I'm talking about, she had a lot of Sagittarius and she had all these things. And I was talking about travel and what an exciting life and whatever. Now, meanwhile, the baby's one. Because her thing was to get the grandchildren's chart done when they turned one and give it to the parents. And so I'm sitting there with her and I said, oh, well, is it your son or is it your daughter? Or, no, it's my son. And I said, oh, what does your son do? Now, then my jaw almost drops open when she tells me, because he's like, a famous actor, Oscar winner. And while they take the baby while they were filming, and he was like traveling all over the world. And I was already like looking at the chart, talking about, all the travel and adventure in the baby's life at one. So that's what astrology can show. It's like, my point is not that I'm wonderful, that I could see that. The point really is to see that these things show in the child's chart without the parents doing anything.
So you could be raising a genius.
Yeah, that's the important thing, because I think that people either blame their parents, but we get the parents that are shown in our chart, which we may or may not want. We get the spouse or the relationships that are shown in our chart, which we may or may not want. And when we understand that that's what we draw in, it can shift things, if we want them to shift.
That is so true, because when it comes down to, at the end of the day, they're like, well, why am I not happy? Why can't my, like how you were saying, why isn't my mother not nurturing me? Because you wouldn't let her. And it's just self-awareness. It's like, okay, if I want this person in my life, I need to shift things a little bit, maybe be more receptive at times and make it consciously. Could you be consciously?
By the time I found this out, I was like an adult. But so it was a little late. But my point is, you don't necessarily have to shift it. You can just understand it and accept that that's the way it is. That's the way the person is. Because sometimes what we all want is other people to change so we can be happy. It's one thing to look at someone's chart and be very objective and, help them out. But when it's your own life, it's, we want people to do what we want or to be the way we want them to be, but they're never going to be, and if it's not the way they are. And so it's an element of, accepting people as they are, or deciding that that's not somebody you can live with. If you're in this relationship and the person's making you miserable, but you think you're going to, you'll change them and you'll both be happy. It's not a good formula for success.
I love that formula where you're mentioning you either accept them or you reject them.
Or you reject the situation. And again, by rejecting, somebody could be a perfectly great person. They just might not be great for you.
Correct. Yeah, that's totally true, because it's not always your fault per se. And, you get the guilt and the shame. You're like, well, I have to put my Saturn down, and, and you feel guilty and you have to let them go. And for whatever reason, and you're like, and then you say, you know what? It's not your fault all the time. It's not always their fault. It's just, you guys are different.
And there may be some things that we repeatedly do that maybe need to change. So that's the other side of that. And so we need to know what to own and what not to.
Right. And you were talking about earlier, we have the good and the bad. And we got to mirror those two. And we have to be, conscious about it.
Well, I think that if a problem keeps showing up, it has to be our problem rather than situational.
Correct. And we need to own that and get help.
But the other side of it maybe is, like, for instance, say you don't like to be told what to do, or you're very independent and you have challenges with bosses. maybe you should just be self-employed. You take yourself out of the problem. See, if you're doing what's I mean, some things you need to work through with other people, but other things, you just may have put yourself in the wrong place. You know, you see a lot of people, particularly people that have Uranus in the 10th house, which is Uranus is the planet of freedom and independence, and, they're working for, I don't know, a Fortune 500 company. They don't belong there. They may not belong there. They want to innovate and change things in a place that doesn't want to change. Go to a startup. Most of the time there's something else that you can do that's more consistent with your nature. I had a guy come in who is a tech guy that works in security analysis. And I'm looking at his chart and I thought, he's really unhappy with his job. I said, this is a great field for you. But he was in a very conventional company. So the field wasn't wrong, the company was wrong. You know what I mean? So you kind of have to look at what work. I mean, obviously life isn't perfect and we can't all get what we want every minute, and our cycles will tell us that anyway. But for the most part, when you place yourself in where you belong, you're going to naturally be more successful. I mean, when I had a job, which was many years ago, I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I mean, the women were still supposed to get the coffee, although I'm not sure how much that has changed. And I remember the big boss handed me a cup once and told me to get him a cup of coffee, and I told him it was against my principles. It did not go over very well. So you just don't belong there, is what I mean. Do you know what I mean? You want to take yourself out of that kind of an environment, if you can. I mean, if sometimes, if you have kids or you're burdened, and there's sometimes that, I don't want people to blame themselves sometimes for what they can't change at the moment. But I think it's important when you start looking at decision making to really look at, is what you're doing going to be consistent with what's going to make you happy? And sometimes people look for too much for their job. Maybe your job is just what pays your bills, and your other interests are what keep you happy.
And and some people suffer behind the desk, getting different jobs or unsatisfied or, job hopping. That's what it is. And they're still unhappy. And that's when they come and see and well, I don't feel fulfilled, and I don't feel fulfilled in my relationship. So I feel like the whole world's against me and it's not with me. I feel like there's a blockage or a barrier.
Well, I should say that in some cycles that could be true. Okay, because there's a difference between the fulfillment, looking at the birth chart, and then looking at what's going on in a given period of time. There are periods of time where things don't work and there's nothing you can do about it. Mm-hmm. And no one wants to hear that, obviously. But it's a lot easier if you can accept that you're in a period of time, that you're in a period of loss, and maybe it's beyond your controls. Stop blaming yourself in your life, but the cycle will change. And look to see what you need to let go of in that period of time. Or it can be, say somebody has Uranus transits and they hate their job, but they're making too much money to leave. But they're not happy. They get in a car accident. Something happens or they get let go. Because something in the universe is pushing them out. And they may not think they want to go. But it's sort of what the universe is telling them. And I've seen people that were getting divorced that were unhappy for years, and they have the Uranus transit, and the spouse leaves. And they're over there, but I didn't want this, but I go, this is your chart. So it gets complicated.
No, and it's true. It does get complicated, and human psyche is very complicated. And we have heard about myths out there that a woman is supposed to marry their father figure or somewhat in that figure, and their son's supposed to marry somebody like their mother figure. What's your thought on that?